Hello, my name is Kristen Bolden, and I'd like to welcome you to The Other Side of History. Now, in our last talk on Anne Boleyn, we left off with King Henry, unable to support the anguish caused by Anne's refusal to marriage, and wrote to her, as is generally supposed, in May of 1528. In the letter, Henry expresses his agony in Anne's refusal. Anne said that he needed an answer from her, having been for a whole year wounded with the dart of love. Henry wrote affectionate letters to Anne, and we may add, especially if we think of the time and the man, Henry employed very respectful terms in writing to Anne Boleyn. Anne, without making any promise, she did betray some affection for the king, and added to her reply a jewel representing a solitary damsel in a boat tossed by the tempest. Anne wished for Henry to understand the dangers to which his love exposed her. Henry was ravished with the present, and immediately replied, "For a present so valuable that nothing could be more, considering the whole of it, I return you my most hearty thanks, not only on account of the costly diamond, and the ship in which the solitary damsel is tossed about, but chiefly for the fine interpretation, and the too humble submission which your goodness hath made to me. Your favor I will always seek to preserve, and this is my firm intention and hope according to the matter. The demonstrations of your affection are such, the fine thoughts of your letter so cordially expressed, that they oblige me forever to honor, love, and serve you sincerely. I beseech you to continue in the same firm and constant purpose, and assuring you that, on my part, I will not only make you a suitable return, but outdo you. So great is the loyalty of the heart that desires to please you. I desire also that if at any time before this I have in any way offended you, that you would give me the same absolution that you ask, assuring you that hereafter my heart shall be dedicated to you alone. I wish my person were so too. God can do it, if he pleases, to whom I pray once a day for that end, hoping that at length my prayers will be heard. I wish the time may be short, but I shall think it long till we see one another. Written by the hand of that secretary who in heart, body, and will is your loyal and most faithful servant." End of quote. So such nice words from a man who later beheaded the very one who, he said, he would always seek to honor and to preserve Anne's favor and to love and to serve her sincerely. Henry spoke of his loyal heart and even included God in the mix, saying that he prayed once a day for them to be married. He claimed that his heart, body, and will were all devoted to her, and he was a loyal and most faithful servant to Anne. One cannot deny that here Henry was playing the part of a passionate lover and used the language of a seducer. It is hard to imagine the king praying to God once a day for anything but a lawful union. These daily prayers of Henry's do present the matter in a different light from that which Romanist writers have portrayed the situation. Henry had thought himself more advanced than he really was, and Anne, she shrank back, embarrassed by the position that she held at court. She begged Henry to give her a position that was less elevated. The king was vexed by this, but he submitted to her request. Nevertheless, that it belongeth not to a gentleman, Henry wrote to Anne, to put his mistress in the situation of a servant. Yet, by following your wishes, I would willingly concede it, if by that means you are less uncomfortable in the place you shall choose than in that where you have been placed by me. I thank you most cordially that you are pleased still to bear me in your remembrance." End quote. Anne had returned to Hever Castle, her father's residence, and the king wrote to her as follows: "My mistress and my friend, my heart and I surrender ourselves into your hands, and we supplicate to be commended to your good graces, and that by absence your affection may not be diminished to us, for that would be to augment our pain, which would be a great pity, since absence gives enough, and more than I ever thought could be felt. This brings to my mind a fact in astronomy, which is that the longer the days are, the further off is the sun, and yet the more scorching is his heat. Thus it is with our love. Absence has placed distance between us. Nevertheless, fervor increases, at least on my part. I hope the same from you, assuring you that in my case the anguish of absence is so great that it would be intolerable were it not for the firm hope that I have of your indissoluble affection towards me. In order to remind you of it, and because I cannot in person be in your presence, I send you the thing which comes nearest that is possible, that is to say, my picture, and the whole device, which you already know of, set in bracelets, wishing myself in their place when it pleases you. This is from the hand of your servant and friend." End quote. Even though Anne had removed herself from Henry's court, and she was there at her father's home, she was still pressed by her father and uncles to marry King Henry. The crown, which had been rejected by Princess Margaret of France, somehow began to dazzle the young English woman. She gradually had familiarized herself with the idea of being the future queen, and every day she found some new charm in the thought of it. Finally, after nearly 6 years of resistance, Anne said, "If the king becomes free, I shall be willing to marry him." End quote. Of course, this was a great fault, but Henry was at the height of joy. The courtiers had watched with observant eyes the development of the king's affection towards Anne Boleyn, and were already preparing the homage which they proposed to lay at Anne's feet. Wolsey was filled with sorrow. He had been the first to suggest to the king the idea of separating from Catherine. But if Anne was to succeed her, there would have to be a divorce. He had alienated Catherine's party, and he was an enemy to the Boleyns. He saw his end in ruin. The cardinal took frequent walks in his park at Hamilton Court, accompanied by the French ambassador. He confided that the king, my master, and all his subjects will cry murder against me. They will fall upon me more fierce than on the Turk, and all Christendom will rise against me. End quote. He gave to the French ambassador a long history of what he had done for France against the wishes of all England. "I need much dexterity in my affairs," he said. The ambassador was moved with pity, and he wrote, "You have never seen a man in such anguish of mind." End quote. There was no stopping Henry now. He was like a car driving down a steep incline. Whoever attempted to stop it would be crushed beneath its wheels. Charles V said that the divorce was likely to raise the English nation in revolt. Wolsey caused this letter to be read to the king in the hope that it would excite his serious apprehensions. However, Henry only frowned and gave the bearer of such a report a gentle lashing. Wolsey mustered the courage to address the king and begged Henry to renounce his designs in marrying Anne. He said that his own reputation, the prosperity of England, and in fact the peace of all of Europe required it. The safety of the church was at stake. Wolsey said that the Pope would never grant the divorce. While Wolsey spoke, Henry's face grew black. Before the cardinal had concluded his speech, Henry said, "No other than God himself shall take her from me." End quote. Wolsey said that Henry used terrible words, and it was plain that he would have given 1,000 Wolseys for one Anne Boleyn. Henry's resolution was the most decided. Wolsey was now sure of his disgrace and took measures accordingly. He built several places with the purpose of winning the affections of the common people. He was agreeable to the courtiers, and he attempted to cover the earth with flowers to deaden his fall. He acted as though he was disgusted with honors and desired to celebrate the charms of solitude. Wolsey knew that the best way to recover the king's favor was to conciliate Anne Boleyn. Wolsey gave Anne expensive presents and assured her that all his efforts would be directed in raising her to the throne of England. Anne actually believed these declarations and replied that she would help him in return. Henry even believed that the cardinal had profited by his lesson. Then a terrible sweating sickness broke out in England. There was a feeling of pain in the head and heart, and the victim began to sweat. The disease made frightful and rapid progress. A burning heat preyed on their limbs. If they chanced to uncover themselves, the perspiration ceased, delirium came on, and in 4 hours the victim was dead and stiff as a wall, as the French ambassador said. The court was at first safe from the contagion, and Wolsey, who was at Hampton Court, suspecting nothing amiss, arrived in London, as usual, but when he discovered that the sweating sickness had broken out, he ordered his horses to be saddled again immediately, and he rode back. In 4 days, there were 2,000 people that died in London alone. On the 4th day, one of Anne Boleyn's ladies was attacked with the sickness, and it was as if a thunderbolt had fallen on the palace. King Henry removed himself with all haste and stayed at a place that was 12 miles off. He ordered Anne to return to her father and invited the queen to join him. Then 4 of Henry's attendants and a friar became ill. Henry had met an enemy which he could not vanquish. Members of his own court were being carried off in a matter of 2 or 3 hours. Terror froze Henry's blood. He cut off all communication, even with his servants, and for a time he shut himself up in a room at the top of an isolated tower. He ate alone, and he would see no one but his physician. It took death to awaken Henry's conscience. He prayed, he fasted, confessed, became even reconciled with the queen, and took the sacrament every Sunday and feast day. In 1 day, Henry heard 3 masses. He had never heard so many in 1 day before. Henry asked for his will to be wrote down. The king was not the only one who took that precaution. It was said that there was 100,000 that were made at that time. Anne was at her home at Hever Castle, her father's residence. She was calm and collected, and she prayed much. It said that she prayed particularly for the king and for Wolsey. Henry, however, was anxious. The uneasiness by doubts about your health gave me," he wrote to Anne, "disturbed and frightened me exceedingly. But now, since you have as yet felt nothing, I hope it is with you as it is with us. I beg you, my entirely beloved, not to frighten yourself, or be too uneasy at our absence, for wherever I am yours. And yet we may sometimes submit to our misfortunes, for whoever will struggle against fate is generally but so much the further from gaining his end. Wherefore, comfort yourself and take courage, and make this misfortune as easy as you can." End quote. So, Anne did not respond to Henry's uneasiness, and his uneasiness increased. So he again sent a letter to Anne, and he said, "To acquaint myself of the duty of a true servant, I send to you this letter, beseeching you to apprise me of your welfare, which I pray may continue as long as I desire mine own." End quote. Henry's fears were well founded, because the malady had become more severe. In 4 hours alone, there were 18 persons that had died at the Archbishop of Canterbury's place. Now, Anne Boleyn herself and her brother also caught the infection. The king was exceedingly agitated, but Anne was calm. Her strength of character raised above her exaggerated fears. Her enemy said, "Her ambition is stronger than death." End quote. So there is still much more on this history, but we're going to have to get into that in another talk. I hope that you are enjoying this history. If you are, I would encourage you to click on that subscribe button. Go back and listen to other talks in this history. And I just am thanking each one of you for listening and wishing you God's blessings.